Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of The Boys. A fantastic episode. A lot of great things. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I thought that intro was really interesting. How, obviously, I took that as supposed, obviously, it's supposed to be reflective of, how, because that was actually a response that was kind of being considered, how to respond to school shootings or to give teachers guns. And so that whole layout, even locking the doors and everything like that, it seems so weird. I guess it's because it's a context of it's something so real, and when you put it into the context of superheroes, but it's weird because it feels almost cheesy, but then you also take the cheesiness out of it because I think it's because of the superhero-ness to it. It makes it just feel so cheesy, but for me, it's but then you take the cheesiness out of it to be oh yeah, but that's a real thing. That kind of it leaves you feeling weird, so you're just huh. So I just thought that whole situation was just interesting. You had the whole situation with Starlight and her mom, which I love that her mom is being really? The anxious one with the sweaty handshake? She's like, Mom, it's stop judging, But her mom giving her a necklace, and it's I don't want you to wear, I just want you to have it because she wants her daughter to be safe and protected, despite everything that, might end up going down. So that's happening. Everyone, with the boys is getting locked and loaded because they ready to go to war because it's the best way to handle this is to basically kill everyone. Which Chewie was we can't kill everyone. We got to find a different way. And, he goes off of Starlight because Starlight's yeah, there might be one final potential way of kind of doing all this. Then Becca shows up. Because I love that moment between everyone when everyone's just crowding around her first. It's Frenchie, Kimiko, then MM, and they'd be oh, sorry, we just know so much about it. She's sorry, it's not the same. It's no, it's okay. It's you're friends. It's you're not really friends. Butcher isn't really close to anyone except for you. And then I love Frenchie being I am. He's no, I'm close to him. It's why are you taking credit for that, Frenchie? You're not that close to Butcher. Because a lot of people have said that, if anyone was probably the person that's closest to him, it'd probably be MM. To be fair, because we still don't fully know their history and, how, MM came to join the boys and, his time with Butcher, but nevertheless, I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. But at the same time, it's Butcher saying, okay, he'll do what he can to get Ryan. So that means having a talk with Stan Edgar, who had talked to Alistair. And I love Alistair being oh, you want a fresca? And he was no, those things are god-awful or whatever. I'm what is with... Once again, it's we got the whole situation with what the Almond Joys things were kind of leading to. So I'm what the hell is this fresca thing all about? But it was interesting, the conversation that went down between it, because it's all right, let's try and get the Deep back in there. It's sure, he admitted to what he did. It's but he's been doing good. So it's okay, but how about, getting A-Train too? It's one, it's one thing, but getting two and back in, it comes off as weakness. I had a feeling, because I had to rewind it, because all you see is a gust of wind. I'm what the fuck was that? So I rewound it multiple times. I'm that has to be A-Train, right? Because I was that's just kind of, no one's talking about it. Then later on, A-Train pops up. I was of course. I knew that was some speedster shit. But it's only one of them could get in, and so they kind of choose the Deep. And obviously it's well, there's also the conversation about well, you kind of have to deal with Stormfront first because she doesn't like A-Train. And then, Alistair's why doesn't she like A-Train? It's he's cut the bullshit. Your history, your research is as extensive as it is, so you know her situation and you know why she doesn't like A-Train. It's all right, so and A-Train's son of a bitch. So he ends up, I guess, that's kind of hints to it. And I guess for him, he decided, I'm gonna dig into this because he knew she was kind of a racist asshole, but he didn't know how deep the whole situation ran. So I think when he looked into race, she's she's a fucking Nazi, So all that's going down. Then there's the whole situation with Homelander and Stormfront. Because of everything that's going down, it has, increased, and this ends up turning out to be part of what Edgar wants, is that basically, because of all this fear and because of all the super terrorists, now people are going to be wanting more and more Compound V. And it never clicked in my head until someone else had pointed it out that basically Stormfront found the soldier she wants, like that guy at the beginning of the last episode, like that could potentially be someone that you could lock and load and be like, that guy willing to take action, that's someone that we, the Nazis, need, on our side type of situation. So, but we find out, like, Black Noir has been out of commission because he's now in a vegetative state because of everything. And I forgot what it was. There was some conversation that led to Edgar, and then Stormfront's like, he's pretty smart for his kind. It's like, oh, okay, so because once again, that's always been the contradiction. It's like, how can Edgar support her? Like, I get it, it's part of Vought and everything. She has long history and ties to Vought, but even I was like, why? You're one of the people that's on her hit list. She don't care about you. You're a minority. She hates you. So like, that's why I'm like, how can you? But I guess for him, because obviously the conversation between him and Butcher kind of made it clear, like, what he wants. Because it's like, yeah, she's able to kind of piss people off, but the more people she pisses off, the more people that sign up for wanting Compound V. And once again, we're not in the superhero business. We're in the pharmaceutical business. So it's like, oh, we rake in all this money. It's like, because that's what this has always been about. This isn't, it's always been business, at the end of the day. Because obviously the whole situation is also about, Homelander. And so I guess you're still not fully, like, you get what Edgar's wanting out of all of this. It is always been about money. Like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I just never understand why he was so okay with just letting Stormfront do whatever the hell she wants to. Because, I mean, I guess it works out in the end. So it's like, I guess Stormfront knew she was being used, but it's like, well, if I'm getting my goal at the end, I'll get what I need, and then, Edgar's screwed. Like, I'll get what I need first. He'll use me, but I'll be using him at the same time. And at the end of the day, when I get what I want, I'm going to come back, wipe him and his kind out. I'm sure that's kind of where that would be, potentially going. So, but obviously you also, because it's like, oh, because now, like, Billy's calling him out for being like a ruthless bastard, but then like Butcher shows his more ruthless side, because it's like, obviously he's like, all right, I want it, away, get the kid away from Homelander. It's like, all right, I found a way for Becca and Ryan. And the moment he said that, I was like, no, at no point in time did, I was immediately like, at no point in time did Butcher mention Becca. And that. He's like, no, I'm getting my damn wife back. You want the kid, you can have the kid, just keep him away from Homeland. And so he's manipulating the situation, and even Stan's like, oh, you say I'm the ruthless bastard. So it's like, all right, you get what you want, I get what I want. Because obviously, like, Ryan is what they need more so than anything. And obviously at the same time with Ryan, we had that moment between him, Stormfront, and Homelander. And I think this is actually kind of the effed up thing about it. Some of those moments between Homelander and Ryan are actually super sweet. He's actually very, like, because that's a sad effed up thing, because he's an effed up individual. You see those moments peek in of him being, obviously he didn't have a normal upbringing. He had a very fucked up upbringing, and that's kind of made, that's kind of led to him having the very many issues that he has. But there's still those moments peeking in every once in a while, because obviously for him, he sees himself in Ryan. So there's not just sympathy, there's empathy there, because like I was literally in the same circumstances. He's like, basically, I didn't have anyone to teach me to fly and all that stuff. He's like, but I'm here for you. Like, I can be that person for you. I can help you, kind of. So like he grew up being alone. It's like, but now he can be there for Ryan, so Ryan isn't alone. And I thought that was kind of beautiful. And there's even this moment you see on like Stormfront's face where it's kind of like, oh, she's kind of like happy. The question is like, is she happy because it's like, good, draw him closer to the dark and Nazi side? Or is it just because she's like, oh, this is sweet, I'm glad Homelander has this? Because I think there is a part of her, because for me, what is Stormfront's affection for him? Is it just purely like, actually do like you, I do care about you, or is it purely because of what he represents, blonde, blue eyes, every Nazi's wet dream? Is it that? It's a combination of the two? Like, it's hard to say like whether her motives and feelings were necessarily genuine, because there were even moments when they were training Ryan, and it's like, oh, find someone that you hate. He's like, I don't hate anyone. She's like, there are people coming after us just because of the color of our skin, and it's like, you're saying that, and you're the one coming after people because of the color of their skin. And she's like, it's called white genocide. And you have that look on Homelander's face like, the fuck are you doing, lady? Like, because some people have thrown it out there like, oh, maybe he wouldn't be down for the whole Nazi thing. Obviously, before he was kind of like, oh, I'm down for the Nazi thing. Because I think more so than anything, he doesn't care about what her message is. He cites in it on certain regards, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's just more so like, oh, this is what my girlfriend wants? Okay, because he's so all about doing what other people want, in particular what the women in his life want. So he kind of submits to women. You understand, like, yeah, obviously he has his issues when it comes to women. So I think that's kind of what that played into. It was more so like, I really don't care too much about the Nazi stuff, but being able to do whatever I want, having a beautiful woman by my side who loves me and believes in me so much, you know, he has that love and attention he's never gotten from someone else. Like, she looks at him like, it's like, oh yeah, I am special, I am important. Like, you know, all the love he would kind of get from other people, he finally has from someone, because the way Stormfront looks at him, like, oh my God, like, I'm amazing, I'm the shit, you know? So, like, I think that's what kind of drives him, and, you know, and why he's kind of, like, super okay with just, you know, all the, once again, Nazi shit that they're up to. We had that scene between, because they were like, oh, we got to meet someone. I was thinking they were going to meet A-Train, but it's like, nah, in fact, it's Queen Maeve, and they need her help. But Maeve is kind of in that spot where it's just kind of like, nah, I've kind of got nothing left, you know, and it's like, you know, and she's, what was it? She said that basically she saw Huey, and he's like, oh, he looks even more of a twink in person. She's like, basically, I can rip that in half like firewood or something like that. I was like, I didn't know how to necessarily take that. I was wondering if you're supposed to take that in the same vein as like, oh yeah, when she banged it out with those two dudes after like Elena left. Like, I wonder if it was kind of in that same vein. I took it as a kind of a sexual innuendo, but you know, I could have easily been mistaken. But the fact of the matter is they want her help, but for her it's like, no. She's like, Starlight, you're asking me for help? I fucking saved your life. The fact of the matter is, like, and is there just nothing, like, I've helped you over and over again? Because it's like, I'm not going to get involved because, like, there's no point, there's no winning. Because basically, like, anytime she's tried to do the right thing so far, it just ended up blowing up in her face and cost her everything. Like, she doesn't have Elena, which was what she was fighting for, and now, you know, it's like, because she always has to confront the fact is that she kind of, you know, probably the whole Elena situation, she would probably already internalize a lot of her issues, and I think Maeve never confronted a lot of her own issues with herself. Like, obviously, like, she had a lot of, you know, the plane situation sat with her in season 1, but I feel like it really struck her this season because of the way Elena reacted. And it's like, you're looking at me like I'm a monster, and I think because Maeve kind of feels like one, so she just kicks them out. Then we also learn, you know, Huey's like, you know, because obviously Annie's like, yeah, I'm mom's, and she's like, I'm so sorry, you know, my mom, I'm just complaining about my mom and your mom's, and he's like, you know, my mom's not dead, right? And she's like, what? See, because they misled us last episode because they made it seem like his mom was dead when in fact apparently she wasn't. She just abandoned him, which I'm like, okay. The fact is we're opening up that storyline. I mean, because obviously we learned a lot about Butcher's, like, you know, family situation. So I'm like, okay, so that must play some role. Maybe that's just character building, but I'm like, they set that up for some reason, especially because they went out of their way to make it seem like his mom died, but in fact she's still alive. I'm like, that's going to come back in some shape or form. I'm just not sure whether it's going to be in a big, important way or whether it's just going to be on a personal character way of, like, he's going to run into his mom. Because part of me is like, are we going to find out his mom is connected to Vought or something like that? You know? Stuff like that makes you wonder. Also, we got a little update with Ashley in this episode I thought was interesting because it's like part of her hair is, I think she's kind of messing with her hair, and it's like, what's up with your head? And it's like, you see like almost like a bald spot. I think she's literally, this job is stressing her the hell out. She's literally losing her hair. I don't think that's, or not less that's supposed to be from like all the blood and guts, and she had to basically cut out her hair to get the blood and guts out of her hair. Not less it was that. It could have, probably one or the other, or could potentially be both. But it's still just that nervousness. I think I didn't even talk about this at the beginning. I should have. I'm so curious if anyone else watched this episode on the edge of their seat the entire time, because you're like, because of the end of episode 7, I'm like, I'm afraid at any point in time somebody's head's going to pop. And granted, it went most of the episode without it being a thing. We'll get to that ending when we get to it. But it's like, I was scared the entire episode. I was like, oh, someone's head's going to pop. I was like, oh, please don't let someone's head pop, because it comes out of nowhere so many times. Literally, I mean, at least the first time it happened with Rainer, it's like, oh, her nose started bleeding, but you didn't know what to expect, and boom, literally the courtroom, the room last episode, it's like boom, 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 holy shit. that's another thing I meant to talk about the Homelander and Stormfront thing was I thought was interesting because I wasn't sure how to interpret that scene as whether or not they were playing like they didn't know what was happening, but it's like, oh no, because Stormfront was like, oh, if it was me, I mean, I wanted to kill Jonah, but it's like I didn't get the chance, and then like you have him being like. Homelander was like, yeah, it wasn't me either. So I was like, oh, it really wasn't either one of you. It's like, okay, so I was like, all right, that's interesting. I was like, what the hell is that about then? Like, if it wasn't you two, then like, who the hell was it, you know? But, you know, circling back to the Huey thing, we now also find out that's what the whole Billy Joel thing was about. You know, it's like him and his mom, they would dance and stuff like that. That'd just be something between them, and obviously his mom just like up and left him when he was 6. So it also plays into why he's kind of clingy like he is, because obviously, you know, Starlight had said the reason why she was here, because she was just kind of like, you know, Butcher and the others are right. We kind of had to handle things the way, because it's like handling things the way we've been trying to handle them, like the more like heroic route. It doesn't work. It's like, oh, so we just turned into the supervillains, but you know, it's like, she's like, why are you here? Because for him, it's like, he's never going to leave anyone. Never. And then she's like, that's why I'm helping you out, because you are like that. You're never going to give up on someone. But the reason why he's like that is because it's a psychological issue of like, he has abandonment issues, and he's scared that like if he lets someone go, they might go and he'll never get to them again. So that's why he's a little clingy. And it's like, it's more insight into his character, but that's also so, you know, interesting, you know, and obviously him being able to admit it as well. Mallory and Newman had met with Robert Singer, which I think is so interesting because Robert Singer, the actor who plays him, is Jim Beaver, who played a character named Robert Singer on Supernatural, which was also an Eric Chris, you know, show as well. So it's just interesting that you're bringing that over. It's like, I didn't realize his character's name was Robert Singer as well until I saw the credits. I was like, oh, that has to be a wink and a nod. Because it's connected to someone he worked on Supernatural with. Maybe they're also associated with this show too. Maybe it's a friend or whatever the case may be. It's just interesting that like that circles back from Supernatural into this as well. But it's like, I even love like Mallory being like, okay, basically help me. Or he's like, oh, you want to blackmail me? Use whatever blackmail you got on me if you want to. You'd actually be doing me a service so I can put this damn job in my review, because like now, like I brought up earlier, like, you know, everyone, like the military, the Pentagon, it's like, nah, because of all these super terrorists, because the country's in fear, pump out that Compound V, and it's going to be a shit ton of money for it. So it's all coming up roses for Vought. So things kind of, on that side of things aren't really working out, you know, so well for them. And for them, as in that regard, I'm talking about Mallory, Newman, and the boys in that regard. And then you have A-Train just randomly popping up in the car with Starlight and Huey. That even caught me off guard. Like, holy shit, I love that you just did that. It's like, yeah, I can be around the entire city in like 3 hours, so all I had to do was like search. And it's like, all right, here's these files, and I want back in 7, so take down that Nazi. Fuck that Nazi or something like that. So they have all this. They can take down Stormfront, which they release it, and then literally as she's walking in the tower, literally everyone's looking around like, oh shit. Then she's watching like a video of someone, like it's her with a Hitler mustache and everything. Obviously it's just all the files that, you know, obviously the church had on her as a Nazi and her affiliations and stuff like that. So it's like, which is so interesting because she's all about her image, her public image, and it's so interesting that being like the big part of her story, obviously her helping Homelander's public image, and for her public image for it to all come full circle and come crashing down, because that has been her strongest suit, has been her public image. That's what's been allowing her to rally people. But now that you know she's a Nazi, it's like, that's over and done with. No one's gonna be like, oh, she's a Nazi. Like, no matter how much of a bit of xenophobia she might be able to stir up in people aren't going to be like, oh. I mean, there are going to be some people that are like, oh yeah, Nazis, I'm still there. Other people are like, nah, fuck that. No Nazis, you know, so there is that whole situation. So later on, she's like storming off because she had went to the tower because it had gone public. At the same time, Butcher's making that promise to Becca. It's like, no, it'll be fine. I promise you, like, I will like bring your son to you. It's like, no, I promise you. And you're like, oh, we know. It's like, you made that deal with Edgar. I was like, tell me you're going to double cross Edgar. Tell me you're not actually going through with this. You know, and in the grand scheme of things, he doesn't, but he still thought about it. So that's, you know, the effed up thing. Oh, and there's also that like beautiful moment between Kimiko and Frenchie where she's asking him a question and he's like, and he's understanding because she's been teaching him the language so he knows, because she's like, what if I freeze again? He's like, don't worry, like, you can take care of yourself. He's like, when the time comes, you know exactly what to do. I'm like, okay, I'm curious to see how this all plays out. So as things are going, they're enacting their plan to get Homelander away while they are trying to get Ryan back. And so it is a situation, like I said, Butcher decides like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And he even says it to Becca, I was going to sell your son out. It's like, get out of here with MM. He'll take you to Mallory. Like, I don't want to be around because I will mess that kid up. So it's like, for him trying to do the right, for the first time, he's trying to do the non-selfish, he's trying to do the right thing, the non-selfish thing, putting someone else's need, because he's like, he realizes, he sees how important he is to Becca, how much that kid needs his mom. It's like, who am I to take some kid, especially because I think from his own family situation, because also I think probably hearing from Vogelbaum last episode about Homelander might play a role in that, but maybe it's just his own family situation, or maybe it's just a genuine moment of seeing that mom and son together like that. It made him go like, all right, I can't do this. So they're leaving. Stormfront shows up, tosses the car, and it's like, oh shit. Luckily everybody's okay. But man, oh man, like everyone's there and it's like, all right, what's going to happen? And then I love Kimiko looking, and then she starts laughing, and it's like, what's that about? And then she signs some stuff, and like, it's like she's saying that she's going to stick her foot up your kitty, or your Nazi kitty, or something like that. And then we go into some like fucking brawl, dude. I'm like, Kimiko got on top of her, bam, bam, blood coming out. I was like, oh shit. Starlight joining in on it. And I'm like, because the moment like she got Kimiko, I wasn't worried because she snapped Kimiko's neck. But I'm like, we know Kimiko has like a strong healing factor. Obviously, every other bullet they're firing is bouncing off of her. She blew up like the RPGs and stuff like that they had stashed in the car. So it's like, oh, this isn't looking good. I was like, shit. Lo and behold, who shows up? Queen Maeve? Dude, 3-on-1 beatdown. You don't feel as guilty because, come on, she's a Nazi, but they beat the living shit out of her. I was like, oh shit. And even Frenchie, because I immediately was thinking like, oh, this is almost like the movie. And even Frenchie's like, oh, girls do get it done. And so it's interesting because obviously it's not Stormfront, but it's Kimiko in the place of her, because obviously the whole thing with the movie of like, oh, girls get it done. It had Maeve, Stormfront, and Starlight. But for all three of them, they are kicking the shit out of her, dude. They are fucking her up, dude. I was like, yeah, because if anything, I wanted it to be Kimiko to be the one to put her down. But then she escapes because Butcher's leaving with Ryan and Becca. But then she catches up. Now, this one's interesting, though. Becca stabs her in the eye. I was like, now that's interesting because we just saw that she's bulletproof, which is interesting because that means like, I guess like any soft tissue on your body isn't, which I think that's such an interesting thing. Just because, I mean, I think maybe it's also supposed to be like a wink and nod to Superman, because I think it's specifically Superman Returns, the Brandon Routh one, that there's a particular scene in it when a bullet comes and hits his eyeball. Like his entire body is bulletproof. So I think that's supposed to be a wink and nod to be like, oh yeah, you're not as bulletproof. Because like, it's hard to say what heroes are bulletproof and which ones aren't. Obviously, like, A-Train's not, because, like, you whack him in his leg with anything, because Kimiko, like, broke his leg last season, so it's like, I think because he even had to still go to, like, do rehab and stuff like that, to Compound V, to kind of, like, rapid fire his healing, but regardless, and she's up there choking Becca, and she's saying that line, oh, yeah, I want to see the light go out of your eyes, and Ryan gets pissed, and heat visions, I was like, oh, burns Stormfront to a crisp, dude. Sliced off, I think, one of her hands and both of her legs, and she's so out of it, she's just speaking German, so we have no idea what the hell she's saying. At the same time, the guys who were there looking for Ryan come back, and it's like, oh, there's no one here. Lo and behold, who shows up? Homelander. He's like, yo, so what's going on here? And he hears, oh, did you pick up the boy? And he slowly turns closes the door. I was like, oh, you guys are fucked. And he's like, where's my son? Next time we see him, he comes out covered in blood. I'm like, oh boy. And then we go back to the Ryan situation. Oh, lo and behold, he messed Stormfront up, but he also killed Becca. I mean, granted, like she's gushing from her neck blood. I was like, no, that's going to fuck you up. Blaming being responsible for your own mom's death. It's like, yeah, you were trying to save her. You inadvertently killed her. I mean, once again, it's that whole conversation that Homelander had about being able to control your powers. It's like, you need someone to help you. They were doing the whole... Well, because remember, they were doing the whole thing of, like, focus on someone you hate. In that moment, he hated Stormfront, you know? And Becca dies in Butcher's arms. It's like, you thought she was going, you found out she was alive, you were doing everything, you were willing to do everything to save her, but you were like, fuck it, all right, kid, Becca, take him and go. Now you're trying to save both of them and you end up losing her. That's got to be the biggest middle finger, because it's like you're stuck with Homelander's kid and you lost the woman you love. You didn't, because at the end of the day, you can make the argument. It's like, I don't give a shit about this kid, but I cared about you because Becca cared about you. And it's just like, damn, dude, that sucks. He went through all that, and it's like, to lose her like that. And he picks up the crowbar, and immediately my brain was like, I was thinking he was going... I was like, they're trying to feign us out. He's actually going to go over to Stormfront and finish her off. But it's like, no, Homelander shows up. So part of me is like, what would he have done if Homelander hadn't shown up? Would it have been what I thought it was? Or would he have gone after Ryan? Because Ryan's over there being like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do it. Like, he's a kid. He can't control himself. But then you have Homelander looking over, Stormfront, which I think is interesting to think about, because, the way Madeline ended up looking at the end of season 1, like when he killed her, it's not the same thing, but it's like, oh, she was burned, Stormfront's burnt, but she's still alive. So it's like, because it's a different thing, because it's also like, did you do this? And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. And he's like, come here. But it's like, nope, he's over there with Billy. And, Homelander's like, what are you going to do? Like, blow yourself up? And he's just kind of like, that's my kid. That's my kid. The kid that just murdered your wife. He's like, yeah, but I promised her I'd take care of himself. Then Maeve shows up. Back down. I was like, oh, dude, come on, Maeve. Please don't get killed, Maeve. Please don't get killed. She's like, you don't back down. Boom. I got this video. Everyone's going to stop loving you at the end of the day. It's like, you want to go, you're going to destroy everything? Sure, go ahead. The public will never love you. And he had made that whole stink in, episode 4 about how he didn't need anyone's love and all that. And obviously someone else had said, like, they didn't think it was going to last long, and it turns out it didn't. Because he doesn't have it, like, because of Stormfront situation, he can't publicly be with her anymore now that she's been outed as a Nazi, so that would complicate that, so he can't really have her. And even then, in her condition, too, so it's like, he doesn't have anything, because he doesn't even have his own son. He's back to zero, so all he has is the people's love. So if he doesn't have that, he has absolutely nothing. So he lets Butcher go with Ryan. I was like, oh boy. Now Starlight is, Starlight Maeve, because it's like, oh yeah, thanks to Starlight we were able to stop Stormfront, which I think it's interesting. What is Starlight wearing? Her OG uniform, because the entire time she's been wearing the uniform that's Vought had made for her. So I was like, it's interesting to see her in that. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I guess that's her being able to, take back being like, I'm not Vought's puppet anymore, so, and then that look in Homelander's eyes, that deranged look of just kind of like, oh, Stormfront's going to get punished and stuff like that, because she's not dead. She's in like, I'm sure, which I think is neat. She isn't dead. She's still alive, so there's still more they could end up potentially doing with her in the future. Or maybe she actually is dead and they're just trying to cover it up for posterity's sake. I feel like, why would you go through that trouble? But it's like, because I think you would need, like, her to be the evil, so like you need her alive to be your scapegoat to everything. And now, like, because of the Stormfront thing, now it's completely and utterly screwed over, because now even Edgar doesn't get what he wants, because now the Compound V is in a situation where it's like, nope, that's not going to get pushed everywhere now because of that. So they ended up bringing down Vought. And obviously that moment between Billy and Ryan, him giving Ryan the necklace from Becca and sending him off with Mallory, and it's like, Now, what do we talk about? He's like, don't be a cunt. It's like, so sadly, even Butcher's not going to be there. But I think for Butcher, that's the best thing he can do, because it's like, if I'm around you, kid, I'm going to screw you up. I am a screwed up individual. I can't do the whole parenting thing. I'm just going to make you worse. But obviously, the conversations between him and Mallory is like, do you think that kid's going to end up like Homelander? It's like, Becca didn't think so. So it's like, I hope he doesn't, Now the boys have been cleared of all the crimes they didn't commit as well as the ones they did. But now because Newman's starting a unit to basically keep an eye on Soups, keep them in line, it's like the boys can come back if they want to. So now the question is, will they? Because MM is out. He came back to his daughter, Frenchie and Kimiko. They're together. They're bouncing. Huey and Starlight. I thought it was kind of neat. For him to talk about the fact is that he's like, he needs to put some distance because he feels like, he is clingy and stuff like that. She's like, well, I guess we can be friends. And he's like, oh, no. He's like, I'm not stupid enough. I'm not fucking stupid enough to kind of ruin what we have. But it's like, I'm definitely going to be too fucking clingy in that regard. But it's like he's pulling away from the boys because he feels like he never really fit in there. So he wants to try and do the right thing. He wants to go about doing things. Because obviously he's kind of been going about things this super illegal way while trying to still do the right thing. So there's all of that. Then you have Homelander, and the moment he's up there, I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? And then you hear the noises. I'm like, is he jacking off? He's literally on top of some damn building, pants around his ankles, jerking one out. I'm like, holy shit, that's nuts. He's like, I can do whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. It's like, oh, he's got to pep himself up because he literally has no one to stroke his ego anymore. And obviously it's one thing after another. It's, it's Madeline. Then it's the whole situation with Doppelganger, and now it's the whole situation with Stormfront. Now it's just like it's like loss after loss after. Oh, and he doesn't have Ryan either, so it's like he's a 4-time loser in that regard. So it just things kind of just you can. He's already messed up. He's going to go even deeper off the end because of all this. Plus, let's not forget he's got 2 traitors, Maeve and Starlight, and he doesn't forget and forgive. So it's like, what's that going to look like potentially going forward? So yeah, at the same time, there's the A-Train and Deep situation, and it's like, I love that at the moment it's like A-Train's like, and it's like, oh, because Alistair's like, oh, you stole the files. And then the Deep is like, what? You did that? I don't know. You got fucking, kick him out or whatever. But it's like, no, I enjoy the initiative. You're part of the 70. And it's like, yeah, they're both congratulating. And Deep's like, so what about me? And he's like, no, it's only one of you. And he's like, but you chose him. And A-Train is like, fuck yeah, I'm out here by. And it's like, oh, shit. And the Deep's like, I did all this. I love it. It's like, what? He's like, I married some weird lady that's not good at blowjobs. I gave you access to all my accounts. It's like, oh, which is so interesting timing-wise. They didn't plan for this, but there's that whole, I haven't watched it, but I know about it just because obviously it was news a while back, was the documentary The Vow. But obviously there's also the wink and nod to this being a very Scientology thing. Because he even saying even when it came, even with the whole thing of us being space, what was it? Space spores. I didn't laugh. It's like, so it's kind of a little bit obviously you can tell the elements of, I mean, it's a cult in general, but obviously there's there's definitely winks and nods to Scientology in that regard. But it's like, man. And I love him being like, fuck Fresca or something at the very end. And even Alistair looking offended, like, why you gotta talk shit about the Fresca? I'm like, what is this bit? But nevertheless, so there's all of that. And then we have Newman on the phone with Alistair. He's like, oh yeah, plus I've got all this dirt on these superheroes. I was like, no, Newman, don't work with him. I'm like, what do you, because for him, he's trying to get tax breaks for the church to get them exempt from it, and everything. And it's like, oh, I was like, oh man. And then we get our one head explosion of the episode. Because I was literally, as we winded down to the episode, I'm like, so are we not going to get anything about the Cindy thing? Because it's like, what the fuck is Cindy? And then all of a sudden his head explodes. I'm like, what? Because I was about to say, we also never found out who was behind that. It's fucking Newman. I was like, that's a dope reveal. It never crossed my damn mind. To be fair, because people had conversations about potentially oh, maybe this was all a fake. this was a fake, like the whole situation of like I brought up before, like maybe like Homelander and Stormfront were faking it in that room, like pretending like they didn't know what was going on. It's interesting to find out it's actually Newman that did it, and it's like, wait. And then the way her eyes were, I'm like, is she kind of like Rogue? Is she Rogue from X-Men / Peter from Heroes, where he could take on the people's abilities? Because once again, because it doesn't seem like it works the same way, because Cindy does it with her hands. Newman kind of did it with her eyes, but part of me wonders, like, does she acquire abilities? So it's like, but I was like, why'd you kill him? Is it because he had the dirt on those other supers, or like, were you trying to, like, what were you trying, like, are you trying to get the church under your belt? Like, but then my mind was like, does she actually work for Vought? Is she actually is she like one of Edgar's other go-to people? Like, what is that? Like, or are you a third party entirely? Like, obviously, like, Vought is one party and the church was another. I'm like, is she a third party in general doing her own thing? Maybe this whole thing about taking down the church and maybe Vought maybe this is all a personal mission to her. I mean, to be fair, because like there was all that death, so all that death she created, it helped Vought. So that's why I feel like she has to be a Vought person considering all that. So maybe killing him, it's like, oh, you served your purpose. You actually helped us in the end. You've done what you needed to. So I need to remove you from the equation. Makes you wonder, is anyone else going to take up that spot? I didn't expect Alistair to get popped at the end like that. Like I said, I was waiting the entire episode. I was tensing up, wondering whose head was going to get popped. I didn't expect it to be his. But that's what I'm trying to understand, like, what her motives are for doing that. Like, I feel like she has to be part of Vought, like, but then, like, what? I mean, I guess, like, much like Stormfront was kind of doing things for her own means. Maybe everything Newman has been doing has been for the purpose of helping out Vought. I don't know what to make of that. And then at the end, we have Huey helping her out. He's like, oh, I'm going to work for you. I want to do the right thing. I want to work with the good guys. And you're like, oh, boy. You have no idea. So yes, a lot of these storylines are closed, but obviously we're not done with the Vought situation. Homelander's still an issue. The boys' names have been cleared, so they're not the criminals that they are, so they can go in a more official capacity. But also you have to think about it. How many of them are going to come back, and what are going to be the circumstances that draw them all back together? Now we have this missing piece of figuring out, like, what the hell Newman's whole situation is. Once again, where the hell is Cindy? Like, maybe that's how. Maybe she... Well, because now, once again, you have to go back to finding out, like, is she the one who killed Raynor? But then the question is, why? Maybe Raynor had found out some stuff about Newman. I don't know, because it's interesting, because, like, Newman, like, pops up, like, once or twice in season 1. She's like a very background character. She still was kind of very background. She's popping in here and there throughout season 2, but even then it's like but now I feel like she's going to be more at the front of everything potentially next season. I have no idea. These are just some of the things kind of going through my mind right now. I'm sure, after listening to other discussions, because I'm so curious to hear what other people have to say about this season finale, dude. This was fucking great. Dude, it sucks. We're gonna have to wait a while, because who knows when, like, production on this is gonna start up again. But obviously, like, even before now, we knew that the show was coming back for a third season. I'm so damn excited to see where they take us with season 3, because there's also that talk about, like, that college spinoff. Like, we don't know when and time frame wise when that's going to take place. Is it going to be in the past? Is it going to be present day? Is it going to happen, like, within the same world? Like, in a sense that, like, everything that's going down on the boys, all this mainline stuff, and then, like, the college spinoff stuff is happening at the same time, just on a much smaller scale. Like, I'm curious about that. So stuff like that, is crossing my mind. But I'm so excited to see where the hell they take all of this, what they do with season 3. It's going to be off the wall. Season 2 is fucking fantastic, dude. And I think season 3 is just going to be even bigger and better, because each season just keeps getting bigger and better so far. So I'm excited to see what they do with season 3. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.